Hello, everybody. We're just getting started right now. Snap the social media for everybody. Okay. There we go. There we go. Hopefully everybody's having an awesome weekend. Here we are. Okay. Yes. Okay. Whew. So, like I said, I hope everybody's having an awesome weekend. For me, I'm just tired because obviously with the new baby, 3 a.m. wake up calls are a thing. Okay. And now let's just go ahead and give the link for our panelists to get in here. Let's see.
Hey, Drak.
O'Hara.
What's going on?
I'm tired. How about you?
Oh, I think you would be. What was it, 3 a.m.?
3, 5, 6, 8. Because there you go. Because okay, new baby, yes, new baby is going to wake you up at 3 a.m. But then I also have a toddler who also, even though she hasn't done it in months and she usually sleeps all night, around 6 a.m. I guess had a nightmare or something, and so I had to take care of her too. So
what better night to do it though?
Yeah, I guess it's just like, oh, Jiminy Christmas. I almost kind of wondered if she was doing it because she was like jealous of the fact that my new kid is in our room and in the bassinet. I don't know that, but it's definitely something that's crossed my mind.
You never know.
You never know, and unfortunately, since knowing is in fact half the battle, I am losing the war. But I do want to point this out to the people who are going to be joining us. Thank you all for the well wishes. Thank you all for the congratulations and all that. That was really awesome to be able to get. Because in some cases, like where having a baby has been kind of like the ultimate. As a parent, you get that high after having a kid. But then at that point, I had a few like real life things come in that were real buzzkills to that. So it was kind of hard for me to stay in that high of having having my new daughter. So thank you all for the congratulations and all that fun stuff. And today is going to be an interesting one as we're going to be doing we're going to be doing a Why We Geek that I've been wanting to do for a while. My only problem is all the people that I talk this subject with don't ever want to join me on a podcast. So we're going to do Warcraft. And I'm just going to go ahead and warn people in advance. We're talking really anything in there. Like I'm not really, I have a feeling a majority of the discussion here will be WoW because World of Warcraft is active, but I have a feeling the Warcraft RTS games are going to get brought up, and I have a feeling the movie will get brought up at some point.
The movie that I still haven't seen.
You still haven't seen it?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. That'll actually be good.
I'm keeping my distance from it.
Oh, because that was going to be my next question is, are you interested in seeing it? So, you know what? I kind of am there with you. That was kind of my viewpoint until I saw the movie. And now I'd rather call it Diablo than Warcraft.
It's okay. BFA might as well be Diablo too.
Well, Legion pretty much was.
Oh, BFA's got worse with it though.
That's it? Okay. This is going to be the other thing that's kind of funny is I know you guys have been on because I've seen you guys in the little community that we have there now.
Bro, I have 3 120s.
Yeah.
But
Can people hear me?
yeah.
Okay, cool.
But for me, I have played a grand total, drum roll, 2 hours. I've played 2 hours in BFA.
Have you even gotten to Borealis or Desaralor?
That's what I've done. So like people were sending me cinematics and trying to spoil it for me.
There are so many cinematics.
Yeah, and so at that point I'm like, stop sending me stuff, and I immediately decided, okay, this is
better
probably a bad
to
idea.
experience them. It's better to experience them through the quest lines.
Exactly. And so at that point, I just said, okay, I'm going to take 2 characters and just go unlock Zuldazar and unlock Tiergard Sound. And I'll see those cutscenes and that'll be fine. And I haven't been able, because of baby and other things, I have not been able to touch it since.
I would highly recommend, since that's the route you're taking, complete both, because I haven't done the Horde yet, but I've seen the Horde cinematics. And I'm jealous of this Horde cinematics because they directly link into the first raid.
See, at that point, like that was kind of my plan, is like, I'm not saying anything bad about Kultiris. I'm not, but when I looked at everything from the BlizzCon reveal, Kultiris never had my attention aside from Jaina. Like, I wanted to see the Jaina storyline happen.
The Jaina storyline is great, and that links into Drustvar, which is like the best zone in Kultiris.
But for me, like, I've always wanted to see troll lore get a spotlight in Warcraft. And so as soon as they announced Zandalar and all of that awesomeness, I'm like, you know, I'm an Alliance player, but I have to see this story. I have to. So I decided right off the bat, I'm just going to go Horde first. And so my plan right now is to do Zandalar first, and then I'll go back and do Kultiris. Because aside from, like I said, aside from the Jaina plot, not really interested in Kultiris and pirates and all that. Whereas Loa and Ancient Gods and Old Gods is a little bit more interesting.
From what I've seen of the Zandalar story, it's great. And really all I know, because I haven't leveled a Horde character, is their final dungeon, King's Rest. It's probably the best troll dungeon in the game.
I'll take your word for it. Again, I haven't seen it, but I'm looking forward to doing a lot of stuff. It's just now with the baby born, I'm hoping to be able to get a little bit more playtime into BFA, because I really do want to be able to unlock all the other allied races. And
what's great is it's only 6 zones.
Yeah.
When you think about it, like, okay, you did that in Wrath of the Lich King. You did that in Cataclysm. Now you just do it 3 on one character, 3 on another.
Well, and what's cool is like a couple of guildies that I've been able to talk to, like they got through maybe 2 zones and they were capped. So at that point, then all you have to do is mop up that last zone so you can get the world quests, and then you got to go invade the other area. So that's
wise. I would say Stormsong Valley really sucks. Did you like Jade Forest? Did you like Valley of the Four Winds back in Pandaria?
Jade Forest, yes. Valley of the Four Winds, no.
Okay. I think I was the same.
If you didn't like Valley of the Four Winds, you're not gonna like.
I've already kind of decided, like, nothing against the other ones. Like when the reveal happened at BlizzCon, I was interested in Drustvar, but when I came to those continents, I'm like, you know what? I want to see how the capital city stuff kind of pans out. I'm really kind of interested in this Ashvane trading company and seeing all the stuff they have.
The story with the Ashvane is really good. I'll give it that, but it links back to Jaina, like you said.
Yeah, so at that point, I actually kind of decided to go against a lot of the guides people were sending out and just go do Tiergard Sound and Zuldazar first. and then I'd go out into the other
The
areas.
order doesn't realistically. The order doesn't matter. But if I were to give you like a good order,
well, because it's all Legion leveling, right? So at that,
you can go in any order, at least in theory.
But I think canonically, if you were to do it like in a story way, I think you should do Tira Guard first, because then Stormsong makes more sense.
I think it's Zoldazar as well, because I mean, if you look at it from a story perspective from your faction, you should want to secure your alliance with either Kultiras or with Zandalar, and that means sticking with the leadership as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can say that I leveled a Horde character, and that's my only 120 so far, so I'm kind of the opposite of you.
I am so jealous of the Horde cutscenes with Bon Samdi and...
Yeah, Bon Samdi's great.
I love Bon Samdi.
I don't think I've gotten quite all the cutscenes because, like, I finished the Zoldazar and the one where with her expedition, but I haven't finished the desert one with the Volpa yet.
Yeah, Voldoon.
I'm better at remembering names.
Well, and the other thing I'm also interested in doing, I wasn't when it got announced at BlizzCon. I want to get into the war campaign and just see what exactly is going to happen with those stories.
Campaign. It's better than the Order campaign and the Garrison campaign for sure.
I don't know, man. The Druid and the Death Knight were pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, I'm not impressed with the War campaign yet, but I still have 2 more arcs to go.
I mean, I've come across some Order campaigns that were pretty lame. In fact, one of the things that might irritate a few people watching, Demon Hunter, not a fan. Not a fan of how that worked out.
I will give you the Death Knight one was good. I liked the Warrior one. I didn't complete the Priest one. I did a few other ones, but
I've done
Warrior stick out for me.
Druid, Death Knight, Shaman, Druid, Death Knight, Shaman, Demon Hunter, Warrior, and I was working on Mage before BFA hit.
Okay.
So, and here's the thing, there are little things to be able to like throughout those Order Hall campaigns, but as far as grand arcing story that they're trying to tell, Druid and Death Knight are probably the best in my honest opinion, just because Druid is connected to Emerald Nightmare, which means it was connected to raid content.
4 Horsemen.
Yeah, well,
Death Knight was cool.
Not only that, but Death Knight, and I've made the claim, and it's going to happen, guys, where I'm going to do top Order Hall campaigns in Legion at some point. Death Knight was good just because it actually found a way to make you feel sick about what you were doing.
Yeah.
So raising Nazgrim or spoilers, sorry guys. Yeah, well, Whitemane, I didn't feel that bad about it. I'm like, you must serve me. But Nazgrim, holy crap. And then finally Tyrion. That was nuts.
Going after, that was not what you would expect from both of them.
Yeah.
I don't know if either of you know, and it's not in a cutscene, so I'm not really considering it a spoiler. You can easily miss it at the end of A Nation United, which is the end of the Alliance quest line. Mm-hmm. There's a few pieces of, I believe it's unvoiced dialogue that you can see between Anduin and Taylor.
I've already seen it.
You've seen it? You know what I'm talking about?
Dude, everybody tried to spoil shit for me. Unfortunately, some stuff I just got spoiled.
I love how they're still continuing with that, and I would love to see, maybe not the next expansion, maybe the one after it, be about Bolvar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because spoiler alert, in case people don't already know, Talia, the person you quest with in Kultiras, you only know her as Talia throughout the questing experience, but near the end, you actually, and I believe it gets a voice at some point where you learn her actual last name is Talia Fordragon.
Yeah, she's Bolvar's daughter?
Yes.
Yeah, she's Bolvar's daughter.
She was sent to Kultiras to avoid the war.
Okay.
And it just so happens that she's around Anduin's age. So I actually am kind of wondering, are they doing this? Are they doing this?
You know what they could do with it? they could match them together. Anduin has a son, and Anduin dies.
That would make me sad.
I mean, everybody else in his family's dead.
Dude. I can't hate Anduin. I can't do it. I have issues with Sylvanas. I understand why she's doing it,
Anduin
but
into a great character. I didn't like him back when he was a child.
No.
But as he grew up, he really progressed as a character.
He's grown up throughout all the expansions.
Which is funny because that was kind of my same problem with Varian. When they introduced him in Wrath of the Lich King, I'm like, oh great, the emo king of Stormwind. I am so sick and tired of this character already. And then
shut my door quick.
And then Mists of Pandaria happened, and I'm like, oh, Varian's actually a pretty cool character. And then you killed him off in Legion.
Yep, that was fun to see.
Strangely enough, I was okay with Varian's death because at least he went out swinging.
Yeah, death.
But Vol'jin, seriously, he had been War Chief for an expansion.
Yeah, and he didn't really do much as War Chief either.
No, if you actually want to count his involvement in Draenor, when you unlock the harbor in your garrison, that was his involvement,
right?
Which was dumb.
I love Garrosh and all, but I always wanted Vol'jin to be the next War Chief after Thrall, and how they just screwed him over and gave it over to Sylvanas, I was like, no, that's not cool.
I think Sylvanas is a more interesting character, but yeah, didn't seem fair. He didn't get to do anything as War Chief.
Vol'jin didn't get to do really anything. He had good moments, but they were confined to books, to comics, to other media. He never did anything really in the actual game.
That
was about it.
In the game, I think his strongest moment was Dagger in the Dark.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think you just said the scenario, yeah.
Yeah, and actually, in my opinion, while that's a powerful scene in the game, it's way more powerful in the book when they actually go a little bit. If you read the book Vol'jin Shadow of the Horde, they go more in depth into the impact of that scene, and to me, it actually adds power that the game didn't. And I've even had this discussion with people I think with one of you guys, war crimes should have happened in game.
Yeah, that was with me. Yep.
Yeah. The trial of Garrosh should have happened that way.
Yeah. And it really should have been in game.
I think a lot of the stuff in the books should be in game because I'm not really interested in going and reading all these other things. So I feel like I'm missing pieces of the story.
I heard they did something similar with Saurfang in Darkshore. Like the whole scene with him and Sylvanas was more fleshed out in the novella.
Yeah, and going into Sylvanas' motivations and she did what she was doing.
Which ultimately made Blizzard make the decision to do the Old Soldiers cinematic.
Which was great.
Yeah, I thought they had that for a while. It just happened to be released at the same time.
Yep. All right. Well, we are actually on time, so let's go ahead and get this show on the road. Now, before I get things started, just so when I put this thing out, how do you guys want me to introduce you? I think I've already kind of covered this with you, Art. You just want to be known as the Art of Anime, right?
You could just do my name. It doesn't matter either way.
Okay. Well, so what do I have your name? I can't even remember.
You said it in my username.
Did I? Tempest?
No.
Okay.
Art?
Is it actually Art? Oh, that's funny.
Okay. Now it all makes sense.
Points for creativity, my friend. Points for creativity. And then for Rising Sun, what do you want to be known by so that I can get all this proper on the RSS feed?
Nihon.
Good.
Nihon?
Yes, that works too. Yeah, Rising works for me.
Rising Sun Reviews? Okay.
Yes.
Let's do that. And here we go. So give me a second. I got to get into character. No, I'm kidding.
So
okay,
funny voices for the podcast.
What was that?
So we get funny voices for the podcast then?
If I can make them work, then sure.
Okay.
Just don't ask me to do the Garrosh voice. I have to go into my Garrosh emo scream. All right.
Really no.
Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Why We Geek, the podcast where we take a specific piece of geek culture and we dissect it, we analyze it, we show why we love it, in some cases, how it could be improved. But today, I don't think that's really going to be a problem, as we're taking on a subject that I have wanted to take on for a long time. The unfortunate part, though, is that a lot of the people that I talk about this with and am fans with, they aren't interested in doing podcasts. But thankfully, because of recent developments this year, I've actually been able to find two panelists to be able to take on the ever awesome and ever changing lore and game environment of Warcraft. And so I'm just going to go ahead and clarify this really quick, because some people have already asked with my announcement, does this mean you're just talking about World of Warcraft? Here's the way that this episode is actually going to go. Warcraft was Warcraft way before the MMO. And so we're going to cover as much as is able. If you we have if you guys have played the RTSs, if you guys have seen the movie, we're going to cover it all and just dissect as much as we can of it. And if it means that we talk a lot about WoW, I'm not going to be surprised about this, as this is kind of an honorary episode for the upcoming, or at least now released, expansion, Battle for Azeroth. And I, of course, I'm your host, Drak, Adam, aka Drak. I hope everybody's having an awesome week so far. As you guys can see, I'm fumbling my words because I'm running low on sleep, because having a baby will do that to you. But I'm also being joined by my panel of fellow YouTubers, fellow geeks, fellow awesome guys in general. If you guys aren't following their content, you should be, damn it. And we're going to start things off with Rising Sun Reviews. How are you doing this fine evening, sir?
I'm good. I'm less sleep deprived than you, though I will probably still fumble my words because that's what I do. So yeah,
that's right.
At least
thanks for having me on.
See, here's the funniest thing about being YouTubers is, like, we can script the content, but then when you actually get us on a live stream and we're unscripted, it's like, now you get the genuine experience, because we might fumble our words. We might actually have to mispronounce some things, and we don't care about the comments at that point.
Yeah, I can't look stuff up on Wikipedia halfway through this because I forgot what something is, which I tend to do a lot. So
exactly. And then we're also being joined once again back from the JRPGs episode last month. We're being rejoined by the Art of Anime. Art, how you doing, my friend?
Does 3 120s in Battle for Azeroth say anything?
Dude, I applaud you. I applaud you right now. Do you want to know what's really sad, though? I have friends that are already at 6.
How?
Okay, that's too much. That is too much.
Dude, yeah. I run with guys who have just, like, we like to make the joke in the guild that they have spreadsheet underwear. All right, like, these guys have done the math. They figured out everything they could possibly do to execute, and then they execute it flawlessly. So these guys, yeah, they're dealing with like 6 120s, all of which are farmers for the raid team.
Yeah, that's crazy. I barely had time to get one with some gear.
Exactly. Well, dude, as people have seen in the pre-show, and I'll even admit it here, as much of a WoW fan as I am, because of recent circumstances, I've only been able to play Battle for Azeroth 2 freaking hours. Basically enough to unlock Kultiris on my Alliance tune and unlock Zandalar on my Horde tune. That's all I've been able to do. And part of that is because people like to send me spoilers because they know I'm going to cover it anyway. So with that being said, let's actually go ahead and get into the first question that I like to do with this podcast, which is very familiar to a lot of people, but it works every stinking time. And that is, how did you first get access into Warcraft? And I'm going to change it up just a little bit. A lot of the times, like in the JRPG episode, I asked, what was the game that kept you a fan of that particular genre? For Warcraft, however, it's not necessarily games, but rather moments. And those moments don't necessarily need to be moments in lore. It could easily be your first PvP kill, your first forging of some kind of weapon that you'd been working so hard to get. And so your first ever exposure into Warcraft, and then the moment that made you a Warcraft fan. So I'll give you guys an example, and then we'll move things along. My first exposure to Warcraft, even though I had seen the games before that, I wasn't really all that interested, was Warcraft 3. Warcraft 3 was now a more inclusive storytelling experience that, in my opinion, Warcraft 1 and 2 didn't simply have. And part of that is because I didn't have a computer that could run Warcraft 2 or Warcraft 1 at the time. And Warcraft 3 was when I got my first ever PC that could run it properly. So that's where I got into the storytelling experience. And the moment that made me a Warcraft fan was, believe it or not, there were two moments, and it's usually ones that get brought up a lot of that time. It was the introduction of two fabled characters within the lore, the introductions of Arthas Menethil, and more importantly, his descent into madness and ascension to become the Lich King, and also my boy, Illidan Stormrage. A lot of people hated him last expansion, and I laughed at the YouTube universe because I'm like, what? Did you expect him to act differently? I love me some Illidan.
He acted how I thought I would.
Yeah, exactly. Like, his character motivations, if you've been following him, and here's the thing. For the WoW community, there's a lot of them that have only been joining in since, like, a particular expansion, so they don't know Warcraft 3's lore. But for me, I just kind of looked, and all of them were freaking out at every single action that Illidan ever did. And I'm just like sitting there going, well, pardon my French, bitch, please. This is Illidan. We don't mess around.
You don't even really need to know Warcraft 3 for that. You just need to play BC.
Or just know he wants to kill the Legion. That's his motivations are not that complicated.
I mean, they pretty much put you through that in the Demon Hunter intro quest line.
They really do. They pretty much show you exactly Illidan's motivations, and to all the people that actually screamed out, especially with the, because I don't think this is spoiling anything, the Argus cinematic where Illidan does the big bad to a lot of people and destroys Zira. I immediately sent them videos, first of all, of the novel complete compilation of the lore of Illidan Stormrage, and I also like linked them the Illidan novel, because I'm like sitting there going, guys, this is not any different than what Illidan has done in the past.
And to be fair, when he killed Zira, I mean, Zira pretty much threatened him.
Yeah.
And
pretty much.
On top of it, it also established that the light wasn't always the good.
Nope. No, that's, in fact, we'll get into that. That's like one of my...
and the Void.
Yes, that's actually one of the things that I kind of want to get into is I love how the story is kind of fleshed out where we thought we had perceived conceptions of good and evil. They aren't necessarily that. But those are my starting moments and also my solidifying into being a Warcraft fan. Let's go ahead and start things off with Rising Sun. So what would be your first experience to Warcraft and your favorite moment that made you a Warcraft fan?
Oh, I think my favorite or my starting moment was my college roommate. My first couple years of college was into World of Warcraft. So I played it a couple times, tried it out. And I think it was like over the one Thanksgiving break. And I said, okay, I'll buy the game, give it a try. And ended up making a Paladin and liked it quite a bit. What I think really solidified, and that was right around the start of Cataclysm. And what really solidified me into getting into it was raiding and just how I hadn't done content like that in any other game before. And I thought that was just really cool.
Okay. So it sounds to me like you started up just before. So you started just before Cataclysm started.
Yeah.
So you were at the tail end of Wrath then. And then at that point, raiding was pretty much what solidified you into the game.
Yeah, because I think when I started raiding, it was like 4.1 around that time with like Bastion and Twilight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
oh,
in one.
At the beginning of the Troll Dungeons then. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then Art, what is the moment that made you a Warcraft fan? And then what is the game that started you as a Warcraft fan and the moment that made you one?
Well, I had seen all through like my middle and high school years, like a friend that played Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3, and he invited me over one day. Probably around the time BC came out. And by the way, can you hear my background?
Yeah, I can, but it's all right.
Okay, because I'm trying to hear you guys over, and I'm like, the raceway is really loud tonight.
Oh my gosh.
Tell them you have a podcast to do and be quiet.
It's all right. You know, like my buddy Alex has kind of pointed out whenever we have problems like that, it's the Let's Play curse. So in this case, it's the podcast curse.
Okay. So we'll blame him for that then.
There you go.
So I first went over his house and he's like, this is WoW, blah, blah, blah. This is what I play all the time. He's like, you should try making a character. So I made a Blood Elf Paladin. I tried it. I got to like level 10 and I kept dying. And then I remember like 3 or 4 times I went over his house. I would always make a new character. I would never figure out how to repair my armor.
That explains the deaths.
So
yeah.
I eventually bought the game, and I think the selling point for me was I bought it in BC. I made my own account around the time Sunwell came out, and as I was leveling, I met a few people that I kept playing with on a regular basis, and eventually I joined like my first guild, Inferno, which then I left that to 6 Paths of Pain. And I became the guild leader of that during Wrath of the Lich King somehow, because the guild leader quit. And that was like the hook in. But if there were a narrative hook for me, it would have had to have been the Wrathgate.
Yeah. Okay. I can relate to that. The Wrathgate moment was actually really, really cool. And it's actually one of my biggest regrets now in game. Is that the unfortunate so the Wrathgate is an amazing sequence. If you guys have already seen that cutscene, I've done it in the Tale of Drakfu. But it actually was coupled with an amazing quest line, the Battle for the Undercity. And unfortunately, that is no longer in the game. That's a crying shame. That was a cool sequence. That was a really cool sequence. And unfortunately, it isn't there anymore. And it makes me sad. It really does. I don't even care that I lose the quest reward now. I want that back, because you had some really good moments fighting off against Varamothras. Like, how cool would it have been since Varamothras made his way back into Legion that they re-released the Battle for the Undercity to get people acquainted with Varamothras,
or like do something like that with like nice. Time walking, or I don't know how that works.
That would be perfect. Actually, a time walking scenario for the Battle for Undercity.
It's one of those things that's a crying shame these days when we had the War of the Thorns recently, and you can actually change the zone back to the way Darkshore was at the Cataclysm, and that's not available here. And that's a crying shame, because that was a lot of hard work. I know that a lot of developers worked their butts off to get that out on time, and it's lost to history.
Yeah, you can't even go back to play it for the people who missed it for whatever reason.
Yeah. So with that being, all of us, it sounds to me, aside from me, we've all pretty much started at WoW. And actually, Art, I'm a little bit closer to where you started, because I started 2 weeks before BC even started. Okay. So at that point, I was.
So you're in vanilla.
Not quite. I don't consider it that, because by the time I'd gotten in
2 weeks before BC.
Yeah, so I was actually like in the BC patch. Everything had been augmented into it. But you just couldn't be Blood Elves or Draenei yet.
Right.
So by the time BC launched, I was maybe level 20. So while people were off in Outland, trying to get quests done, because we all know the kerfuffles that happen there. I was off in Redridge Mountains, and I was sick of the place. I want to go see the new stuff. And in turn, that's actually what got me to start up a Blood Elf and go to one of my favorite starting zones ever, Eversong Woods. But moving on into the next question here. So we're all pretty much associated with WoW. The first question that I want to actually ask is, since you play WoW, this has to be asked because Warcraft is known for one simple concept: Alliance versus Horde, red versus blue. Which faction are you predominantly on, and what keeps you motivated to stay in that faction? It could simply be a reason of friends, because guys, we all have that to some extent. But if you have other reasons, it's entirely cool. Like, you like a particular lore character and he shows up only in Horde quest lines or in Alliance quest lines, stuff like that. So where do you predominantly play? And then also, what keeps you in that faction? For me, it's actually fairly simple. I started this game as Alliance, and it's just because my older brother was playing the game and I wanted to play with him. But as the game kind of wore on, a lot of the characters that I liked were on the Alliance faction. As I've already said, Arthas, you get a lot of really good quest lines via the Alliance to understand Arthas and his reasonings. You also got Jaina Proudmoore on the Alliance side, who's been kind of like retconned into via other books as a lover for him. You also had Illidan. My boy Illidan Stormrage is a night elf, so that just kind of kept me there. And ultimately now it's for a couple of expansions now, it was Varian Wrynn. I hated him in Wrath of the Lich King, but then he started to get development, and I was more interested in what they were doing with him than a certain other war chief that got dethroned in MoP. That's the raid kill that should have been mine, Thrall. So I'm just saying. But also the fact that one of my other favorite lore characters since the Cataclysm is also on the Alliance, and that is my boy Gen Greymane. For Gilneas. So let's go ahead and switch things up. Art, what is your predominant faction, and then also what keeps you in that faction?
Pretty much the same reasons as you, Alliance. It wasn't my brother, but it was my friend that played Alliance back in BC that I wanted to play with him, so I did. Mm-hmm. And then I switched to Horde when faction change became a thing.
Yeah. Believe it or not, guys, that wasn't a thing right off the bat.
And that was mainly because I played on Mal'Ganis. And if you know anything about Mal'Ganis, in the late BC, early Wrath era, it was like 5% Alliance.
I think I had a character for a while.
So I'm like, okay, it's time to go Horde. That way I'm not getting killed everywhere I go.
Was Mal'Ganis PvP?
It was.
Yeah.
Okay. Not that those exist anymore.
Yeah, because so my starting experience, and it's actually where a majority of my characters are, is Doomhammer, which was the opposite. It was 90% Alliance and about 10% Horde. But the Horde that we had on there were pretty badass players. All right, so I'm just saying, like, Alterac Valley was not set in stone for us. If you had the badass players up and running, we might lose. Kind of thing. I'm just saying that right off the bat. Rising Sun, what faction do you predominantly play, and what keeps you there?
Well, I'm the opposite of Art in that I mainly play Horde. The reason I played it is the guy who got me into WoW played Horde, so he told me to do that, so I listened. And then over time, I got more characters, didn't really want to restart as Alliance, plus I made a lot of friends I raid with, and since I can't cross-faction raid, I've basically been Horde for everything. I do try to level at least one Alliance character per expansion just to see their side of the story, because like I really like Anduin's character, his arc throughout it. Jane has been really interesting lately, so I do want to do that with BFA as well. It just might take me a while because I'm trying to gear up my Horde characters first.
That's kind of a minor question that I want to get into, is that did you ever feel motivated to create a character of the opposite faction just to see how, an Alliance or a Horde quest line might run through? I did that, but I eventually stopped for the Tale of Drak. Like up until MoP, I had seen the Horde storyline through one character, and then I stopped and started that back up with Drak and Legion. What about you, Art? Did you ever feel the inclination to do that?
I am going to be, because I want to see the story of Bwonsamdi.
Bwonsamdi, he be wanting your soul. He be wanting your soul.
He's one of the best parts of BFA. You'll enjoy him.
I already have a feeling there's a couple of characters I'm really going to like just because of their introduction. I like what they're doing with Jaina and the fact that it's kind of a horror story. I like the fact that Bwonsamdi is finally in this game when they've already had such really great moments for him in the books in connection to Vol'jin.
Okay, I hadn't seen those.
Oh, yes. And also the other character that's kind of been on my radar since I started in Horde is King Rastakhan. I like the fact that where lore up until this point had kind of pointed him as a foolish king, he actually is pretty wise.
I want to say it, but it's such a spoiler for old dear.
Okay, well, then don't, because I haven't seen it yet.
Because it has to do with Rastakhan and everything. I'm like, you just need to wait and see how foolish he can be.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, because, I don't think he's a complete fool, but he's definitely caught off guard by a few things.
All right.
There's some decisions he makes that are pretty bad.
All right. I like this concept because here's the thing. One of the things I like, and this kind of leads into the next question. Some Warcraft characters are not infallible. They do things for the wrong reasons, or in some cases, the right reasons. And so the next question that I have here is, what is your favorite character in the Warcraft lore? Doesn't necessarily need to be of your faction, but if you want to do one for each, that's completely fine too. Or you can do characters outside of it. For me, what's actually become a really powerful alliance character to follow has been Malfurion Stormrage for me. Like, since Illidan is not in the game that much, if you look at the grand scheme of things, he was in BC or anymore. Yeah. In BC, he was in there barely. And then they just didn't, like, you got little quest lines here and there that would involve him. But Malfurion's development in WoW has actually been something really awesome to see, where in Warcraft 3, he might not necessarily have been open-minded to a lot of things. He has since had to kind of adapt to that. And so he's actually primarily why I play a druid now, is Malfurion has become kind of an admirable character in that regard. For me, a horde character, if I had to point out one, unfortunately, he'd be dead. I've really liked the development of Vol'jin in recent expansions, and I've liked that he's gone from just being a loyal tote the banner kind of horde leader into actually being the reluctant leader of the horde, if that makes sense. One of my favorite moments for Vol'jin is the end of the Siege of Orgrimmar, where eventually he just kind of gets put into the mantle of leadership. Aptly enough, if you've read the Shadows of the Horde book, Bwonsamdi actually warned him that if he wanted his goals met, he would have a horrible mantle placed upon him. And a lot of people have suspected that was it, that he was going to become War Chief of the Horde. But it's an amazing process to see Vol'jin actually become that and ultimately make a decision that I think a lot of us are regretting right now, as he appointed Sylvanas as his successor. But that's the way that it goes. Rising Sun, up to two characters in Warcraft lore that you have loved to see anything about.
Well, I mentioned him earlier, but for Lion's side, Anduin, just because I liked his journey from being a kid trying to do good and then basically being thrown into the situation having to be king after Varian died. Yep. And I'd like the relationship between Varian and Anduin, how they were learning from each other, and then how Anduin is now thrown into this, has to figure out how to lead his entire the alliance.
Mm. And I want to add to that with Anduin, it actually gave Gen a place to belong too.
Yeah, it's like a sort of advisor to Anduin.
That was my question to you, Rising. Have you read Before the Storm?
No, I haven't read any. The only book I've read was the audiobook they did for Gul'dan.
Then I would recommend that you do it. And the only reason I would is because it has tremendous Anduin development.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
In fact, there are events in Before the Storm that I really wish had been in the game as kind of a precursor to the War of the Thorns. It would have really helped people to understand why Sylvanas went into her campaign the way she did. But no, there's tremendous Anduin lore in that. In fact, I'm glad Art brought that up, because that's where you actually really get to see this cool relationship develop between Gen and Anduin as kind of a weird father-son relationship, as Anduin starts to kind of look at Gen as a surrogate father, for lack of a better term, but probably more aggressive than Varian. And Gen starts to look at Anduin as kind of a surrogate replacement for his son, Liam.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting because Anduin is more peace-loving, while Gen hates the Horde. So how they're looking up and growing closer, but still have that difference between them. And
I don't think this is spoiling really anything, but in Before the Storm, Gen's mind gets changed a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, that'll be interesting to read then.
So is that the only character, or do you have a Horde version?
Horde version, one that I really liked was the Blood Elf leader back in Mrs. Pandaria, but then he's basically done nothing since then. So
Lorthamar. Yeah. I like the fact that Lorthamar there was actually solid speculation during Siege of Orgrimmar as to who was going to be the next war chief, and Lorthamar was in the rankings pretty high.
It was either going to be him and Vol'jin probably, and still, like, I liked how in Pandora they like focused on all the different Horde leaders, and
I think it ultimately ended up in a 3-way tie because they eventually like went to Forum Opinion, and it was a 3-way tie between Vol'jin because the book helped make that sense, right. Lorthamar because of a lot of his Divine Bell lore and Isle of Thunder lore that you got with him. And Sylvanas because, Sylvanas has a dedicated fan base.
Yeah, because she's Sylvanas.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, there was like a 3-way tie that eventually ended up in Vol'jin. But Lorthamar had just as much good reasons to be the leader of the Horde.
Right. And it's a shame, though, that he's done nothing the past 2 expansions, at least.
I haven't really seen him since Mop.
I think he did a little bit of like the Nightborn introduction quest.
Yeah, he was in the Nightborn, but that was really it.
Yeah, that wasn't anything for him.
He's in the Nightborn. He's referenced in the Void Elf one because it's openly stated that
the Void Elves were exiled from.
They're exiled and they're hunted by the Blood Elves, like they're hunted to be banished. So that's taken as kind of an action from Lorthamar. And I want to say Legion has given him at least a little bit of lore, but most of the Blood Elf character stuff that's actually happened has gone to Liadrin in these expansions. And I actually think people like Liadrin a little, because of the lore she's gotten, people like Liadrin a little bit more than Lorthamar now. That's just my take on it. So you got Anduin and Lorthamar, all really good picks, in all honesty. Like I like both of those characters. Which characters do you love in the Warcraft lore?
Okay, so my Alliance one is kind of double-sided, but I also have a Horde.
Mm-hmm.
I really like what they've done with Jaina recently, so she would be my top pick. Not because of like really who Jaina is or anything, but just how they presented everything with Jaina and BFA. The whole arc felt almost as emotional as I would say Arthas.
Yes,
like
that's like through the questing zones and stuff.
All the way up, it's through the questing zones and all the way up to a nation united.
Okay, yeah, I wondered
once you complete all of Kultiris.
Okay.
Yeah, because they've basically been building on a lot of the stuff she's been dealing with since Tides of War.
And
if you've read that book.
I did not. But I believe I did mention it to you in the community, Drak, that the end of the Jaina questline is very, very reminiscent of Cloud's descent into the life stream and Mediel in Final Fantasy VII.
Okay.
So like
I remember you saying that. Yeah,
when Tifa's like going through his memories and all of that, there's a very similar feel to what you do alongside Catherine Proudmoore in Jaina's like memories, and it relates to her as how she views her relationship with Varian, with Daelin, with Arthas, with her mother.
The only question that I want to ask you about is simply, does Kalecgos get referenced at all?
I don't believe Kalec was in it.
Okay.
No.
Because the books have kind of established like a new relationship, a weird, awkward relationship between the two of them.
Ronan was in it, though.
Okay, if Ronan's in there, then I'm happy about that. Because Ronan, unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand like why Ronan kind of gets lumped in with Jaina. I hope that kind of explains.
Because that the part with Ronan was like, you know how in Legion she like avoided the Council of the Six when Khadgar wanted to bring the Horde into Dalaran.
Yeah, she basically just left it there.
It relates back to that.
Okay.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't actually. Well, I think the plaque has now been amended to be able to do it. If you go to Legion Dalaran, they do better explain the death of Ronan, because Ronan has since been dead since the novel Tides of War, where he ultimately sacrificed himself to mitigate the damage of the mana bomb that hit Thereborn.
Oh, okay.
Which a lot of people have speculated led into the weird transformation that Jaina now has.
That might also explain her hatred of the Horde, how I guess having your city bomb would do that.
Yes.
She actually blames herself for it.
Yeah, that's the interesting part about this, and one of the reasons why I fucking hate Jesse Cox these days. Why I really hate him, because he's the guy that started up the whole Jaina is a Dreadlord thing.
Oh.
But if you actually look into her character arc, it makes sense in a really weird way. Her hatred of the Horde makes sense, because all of this crap has happened in just a succession of events, and all of it is basically her internally saying, Dad, you're right.
Yeah, and for a long time she was thinking, oh, they're reasonable, we can have peace with them, but that turns out not to be the case. And I remember
she almost annihilated Orgrimmar.
Oh, when was that?
So again, this is where I'm the lore nerd, because in Tides of War, she takes the remnants of the mana bomb, because the casing was still there, and she uses that as kind of a medium to summon a giant wave to take out Orgrimmar.
Oh, okay.
And Thrall stops her, basically saying that you would become Arthas at that point.
Okay.
Like there would be no turning back, and that's why she's kind of gone into, especially in Mists of Pandaria, into that neutral state where she's just kind of trying to get Varian on her side, but she's not pushing it.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately why she took over the Council of Six in Mists and later Warlords.
Yeah, so there's more nuance to it than just pure hatred then.
Yeah, so where a lot of people could, this became a legit theory for a while there of Jaina is a Dreadlord, and then all you had to do was get people to read all of this stuff, and you would understand why that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, her actions make sense considering everything she's been through.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's one of those things where damn you, Jesse Cox! Because now I had to deal with 10 or 20 people who was no, I don't care what you have to say about this. Jaina's a Dreadlord.
No.
And it didn't even help that Antorus, you had the Varamothras line going, she is working, she is scheming. And it's damn it!
And everybody was tearing that line apart.
Oh, yeah. Well, and before him, we were tearing apart Il'gynoth because of all of the little riddles that he sent in the Emerald Knight King. Yeah. Which now is not necessarily Anduin. It could be Wrathion, because he's back.
Oh, is Wrathion actually back now?
Yeah, he's in the Alliance Embassy, or at least he was for a while.
Yeah, I knew he was at the start of the BFA beta, but I thought he was gone. I thought they took him out.
I can't remember. Well, I was never able to actually verify it because I never got into the BFA beta. But moving on into the next question, though, because it's interesting that we're talking about a lot of this lore stuff.
Oh, but one of the things, Horde character too.
Oh, did you have a Horde character? Go ahead.
Yeah. By extension of Jaina, before I get to the Horde character, Gorak Tool, because I love the Drust. You haven't met Gorak. You haven't met Gorak.
I have not met him yet, but
they should have done a raid for the Drust, but his storyline ends with Jaina.
Well, I mean, we don't know if they will or not. Because is he? Dang it. Well, sorry, man.
Pretty cool try.
But for Horde, it would be literally Hitler himself, Garrosh Hellscream.
The raid kill that got away. Damn you, Thrall!
I just think Garrosh as a concept, you have Illidan and Arthas, who originated back in the original games, and they carried them into WoW and fleshed out their stories even more and did so many great things with them. You have a character like Garrosh, who originated in WoW and got a full story arc for himself and turned into something more than just a replacement Thrall.
Yeah. See, what's interesting is a lot of people don't actually know this. You meet a young Garrosh Hellscream
in Outland
way back in Burning Crusade. And he isn't the guy that we all knew him to be. We're talking about a guy who had literally been raised as his father was a traitor.
Okay.
And so he was like a dishonored like he was a bastard child as far as anybody was concerned. So like if people want an equivalent, think Jon Snow kind of in Game of Thrones. He is just kind of a bastard and he's ostracized by the orc community. You come across him in Garradar and the Grand. And like he has to prove himself to not be his father, which is sad because he ultimately becomes his father.
And on top of that, through Wrath of the Lich King, you get to see Thrall like showing him what the Horde is about and like basically grooming him to be the next war chief.
Yes. And having to deal with conflict doing that. Because like a lot of people like to go back to the way old Ulduar trailer and see just like Thrall trying to kind of steer Garrosh in the proper path. And he wasn't like, if you quested in the Horde areas in Northrend, you would know that's impossible because he was already kind of trying to overthrow Thrall politically in Northrend. But it was to a point where he could have still been admirable. He still could have been a good guy.
And what I think is ironic about Garrosh, for the most part, is if you've done Stone Talon Mountains and Cataclysm on the Horde side, at the end of the quest line, you see him take one of the orc generals, and he basically like puts him in a chokehold, lecturing him on like betrayal of the kingdom, why you never go against the Horde, and he throws him off the elevator lift.
Literally quoting Varrock.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best part about that whole thing. He literally quoted Varrock. Poor Varrock. But all right, so moving on into the next one. So we have really good ones being said. So we had Malfurion. I believe I can't even remember who my Horde one was, but we already have amazing characters there. But one of the things that is loved about the Warcraft lore is the villains. The villains, in some cases, are what define an expansion for people. It is why that expansion is the best freaking thing that's ever happened in the game. And so in that case, who is your favorite Warcraft villain? And for me, that's a difficult question to answer because I don't want to go the normal route that a lot of people might. I love the Lich King and I love the story of Arthas. But one of the things that I've really begun to love in recent expansions is Old Gods. The Old God lore is becoming freaking amazing. And it makes me very excited because I have a feeling Battle for Azeroth isn't the PvP expansion I thought it was. It is the Old God expansion I've been wanting for a while.
Stormsong Valley and Tieragard Sound will confirm that for you.
Yay! Yay! Sorry, I have to take this moment. Yes! 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 Okay, I'm good. I'm good now.
Azshara is back.
Oh, and I'm excited. I don't know about you guys. I just barely saw the Warbringers Azshara.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, that's exactly what needed to happen there. It's exactly what needed to happen.
Yeah, we need to, like, I want to see what they do with her. Since I didn't play the original Warcraft RTS games, I don't know that much about her.
She wasn't in them.
Oh.
The only reference that Azshara has ever been in the games is the Well of Eternity Cataclysm dungeon.
Oh, okay. I thought that she had some sort of role elsewhere other than just, like, being a historical figure.
She was, again, I hate to go down this road, but she was in the War of the Ancients arc in the books.
Oh,
so that's where we first learned about Azshara and a lot of the problems with her, and then eventually we kind of get hintings in the Frozen Throne expansion as to her being a bad guy, but not necessarily why she is.
Okay, so yeah, it looks like BFA will be the first time in the game that you can really flesh her out. Then,
yep, she is. Well, they fleshed her out a little bit in Legion, but only to say that she still is her usual petty self.
Yeah.
But this is where she's she's the villain that a lot of people have been screaming to see because we've seen Naga models. Yeah, we've seen Naga models, but we all kind of sit there and go, okay, Naga look really, really cool. what's a Zhara gonna look like?
Oh, they have her model in game.
They do, and I actually like a lot of the concept stuff that got leaked at last year's BlizzCon.
When you do Shrine of the Storms, you will see her in game.
Oh yeah, I did that. What was it, last night? I think.
Damn it! Stop it! I will stop this podcast right now.
Yeah, we know Drak's going after this. That or sleeping.
You know what? That's a harder call than you think it is.
I'm sure.
Because I know I'm going to get 3 a.m. wake up calls, but it's like, well, maybe if I stay up, I can make that a little bit less. Nah, I probably wouldn't be able to get into a dungeon tonight. So yeah, I'm just going to point out the old gods. They've actually proven to be an amazing threat that was kind of a side thing in the RTSs. Like, we actually do get access to, if you've done the Wrath dungeon on Kahet, you actually kind of go into that area in Wrath of the Lich King, or in Frozen Throne, and deal with they kind of hint that it's an old god, but now we've had it retconned where it's a spawn of the old gods. It's like a very powerful spawn.
Okay.
So at that point, like, you had exposure to that in the RTSs, but not that much. And WoW has gone nuts with it since then. To this day, I still have people who, like, when they rate rating content, they will literally look at all of the awesome stuff that's come in Antorus and literally go, Yogg was better. Just because Yogg at progression was that hard, kind of thing.
Yeah, I've heard that was like a crazy battle.
Yogg was amazing.
My guild had done, I think... My guild master is probably listening. She will kill me if I say this wrong, but I believe we had actually been able to achieve Alone in the Darkness 10, but not done Algalon. At that point, the guild kind of fell apart because Ulduar kind of broke them. That and Trial of the Crusader. There was like, hey, we're kind of done with the Loot Pinata. Can we go to Ice Crown now?
Trial of the Crusader was good on heroic.
I wouldn't
Only
know.
On
like,
heroic.
I literally in Wrath territory, I went from Nextramus to Ice Crown. That was my progression in Wrath.
Ulduar
I bypassed all of that, and then
Ulduar was the best.
Oh yeah, like, I've done Ulduar since then, and there's tons of awesome moments in that. But like, as far as progression is concerned, I literally went from Nextramus to Ice Crown, and
which are still both solid dungeons.
Yeah. So for me, yeah, I'm going to say the old gods. Rising Sun, your favorite villain of the Warcraft lore.
Oh, I'm going to answer the question a little bit differently, because in my favorite, like, building up to fighting them, and that would be Garrosh throughout all of Mists of Pandaria. Because, like, at the start of Pandaria, we knew that he was going to be the final villain, so I was really interested in seeing how they were going to build up to that. And then the whole Siege of Orgrimmar, I really liked, because these weren't like just new characters they introduced for us to fight. We were seeing all these characters that we knew that we had fought alongside before, like Nazgrim.
Yeah, even I'll admit, like, and I will just say this for the record: you were if you went to my guild right here now, my friend, whoo boy, you'd be told you were wrong, because people hated Garrosh. But at the same time, I agree with you completely. I didn't want to fight Nazgrim.
Yeah, that was so sad.
Even more so being a horde who fought alongside him in, like, the Jade Forest.
Yeah.
And that's...
that, and I also didn't like the whole concept that, as to me, the Kor'kron Dark Shaman were also kind of a very sad tale, in the fact that these were shaman that probably at one point worked under Thrall, and now were twisting the elements under the service of their new war chief. That always seemed really, really sad to me. That's just my kind of take on it. So
no, I see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, I guess I didn't know much about them to get that context, but yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah. So like, Nazgrim is sad, although I will say I got a little bit of satisfaction after killing Malkarok, and I want to say I got satisfaction from killing Garrosh, but damn you, Thrall!
Hey, at least you had Taranju.
Yeah, but Thok was fun, the giant dinosaur in that raid. That was one of my favorite fights.
Oh, crap.
Thok, I think his name was?
Thok the Devourer. The Devourer.
Bloodthirsty.
That's right. Thok the Bloodthirsty. That was actually really cool. I actually also did like the mechanics of Siegecrafter Blackfuse.
Oh yeah, that
I
was
like how that was done. And ultimately, I liked that Miss Pandaria made good on its threat at the very beginning of the game when the Paragons of the Claxi were announced as a boss in the Siege of Orgrimmar.
Yeah, that was another one where I really liked the question zone with him, so it was kind of sad having to fight it and then kill them.
Yeah, because like that last quest where they basically tell you, like, as soon as the old ones rise, we'll take their side. You immediately just kind of feel like, I've taken all this time to befriend you.
I'm exalted with you.
And now I'm worried you're going to stab me in the back.
Uh-huh. So yeah, like so many of the bosses there were built up that way, and yeah, I think that's probably my favorite raid too because of all the story they have in it.
All right, Art, what would be your favorite villain in Warcraft lore?
So since I brought up Garrosh as a character, I'm not going to use him as a villain.
All right.
So if I had my next in line, I would have to agree with you that it would be the Old Gods.
It's becoming an amazing thing to be able to follow. Like, even, and the coolest part is that the Old Gods don't necessarily need to just die. Cthulhu has seen lots of life through comics and through books and everything like that. You know, I mean, he's in Cataclysm technically because what's his name? Cho'Gall is basically the avatar of Cthulhu. And I think even in his heroic encounter, he summons minions of Cthulhu in that fight.
Yes,
so you have that. We don't have an avatar for Yogg-Saron. I have a feeling something's going to come down the pike. And Y'Shaarj got lots of love in Miss Pandaria. So
I was actually going to say, despite him being like the only one that we never physically fought of the current known, I shouldn't say known, but ones that we've seen, because we haven't seen N'Zoth yet. We really haven't seen N'Zoth.
No, and guys, I'm just going to go ahead and point this out. The Hearthstone card doesn't count. The Hearthstone card is probably based on concept art for N'Zoth, but at the same time, the model for WoW is going to be different than a card. It has to be.
Of the three that we've seen, I would have to say Y'Shaarj is my favorite, and not because of Garrosh, actually. I loved the concept of the Shah.
Yeah.
And, like, the idea of the Claxi, going back to them.
Okay.
The fact that Shek-Zir got basically possessed by the Shah of Fear, and we had to cleanse her to help the Claxi. They betrayed us was heartbreaking. Like, their queen is against them because of Y'Shaarj. We killed their queen and did everything we could for them.
I'll tell you one
they stab us in the back.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, one prime moment that actually made me very sad in Pandaria, just because you can't change it. It is actually supposed to be phased in the game. Was the emergence of the Shah of Doubt in the Jade Forest.
Oh yeah,
because to
one in Temple of the Jade Serpent.
Yeah, but you remember you got a big old cutscene that actually forever changed the landscape in the Jade Forest, because you had that giant jade statue there that had a lot of wildlife around it. And when you unlock that finally, you know, it's point of no return. You can't go back to the original Jade Forest the way it was. And it took such a beautiful area to me, and kind of did what a lot of people complain about later in the the Veil of Eternal Blossoms and the destruction that comes because of Garrosh.
Yeah, I thought that was cool how they actually like destroyed parts of the world through all the stuff going on.
Yeah, it sucked, but in a lot of cases it had to.
Right.
I actually felt like when it came to the Shah, like, you look at, say, the Warlords of Draenor in comparison to them, and we all know WoD wasn't a good expansion and they could have handled it better.
Yeah.
But the way they handled the Warlords versus the way they handled the Shah were so spread out. You had some of them in the world, like violence and anger. You had fear and pride in the raids. And they kind of did that with the warlords, but they dropped the ball halfway with them.
Yeah, because the Shah you're fighting all through, like you had the one in the Siege of Orgrimmar, but then you had the one at the, what was it, the Shah of Fear?
Terrace of the Endless Spring.
Yeah, that's it.
Then
so you had
which was Anger.
Shah of Doubt in the Jade Temple. You had Shah of Hatred in the Shadowpan Monastery. The Shah of Fear in Terrace, but also Heart of Fear, ultimately. Shah of Pride was in Siege, and
one of the Krasarang Wilds, I think.
Yeah, the Shah of Despair,
was
in Krasarang, and then the final one, the Shah of Anger, which was a world boss.
Okay,
but then you compare that to the Warlords, which basically all, with the exception of Grom and Duratan, were dungeon or raid bosses.
Pretty much. I mean, ultimately, the concept design was to have Grommash be. Like we remember hearing this at a BlizzCon. Grommash was supposed to be the ending boss, which a lot of people speculated was going to lead into a Hellfire Citadel. And I think at that point they decided, no, we really should do Gul'dan as kind of the ending guy. And
then like tying it more into Legion.
Yep.
Looking at it retrospectively, it worked better that way.
Yes. Warlords I have a love-hate relationship with, because I think the opening experience for it was amazing and nothing really ever met to that. So like I especially the Alliance experience, which actually is, if I'm going to be honest, one of the things that's pissed me off about BFA is its treatment of a character that was made in Warlords.
Oh, her?
Yes. Yadel. And that's because you literally see her as kind of a timid King Arthur-esque figure going through the Shadow Moon quest line, and then eventually become the hero that she was meant to be. And now, if you guys have not already read the spoilers, when you unlock the Magar Orcs, you actually deal with a light forged version of Yadel that is evil.
Yeah, and I haven't unlocked it, but I'm curious to see how they handle it, because like you, that seems like very strange, but maybe they'll be able to justify it later on.
I really hope so, because Yadel was one of the few things that I walked away from Warlords, and I would fight people vehemently, like in forums and all that, saying, you got this character, so it's not ultimately all that bad.
Yeah, it does seem kind of a shame. Like most of the Warlords general characters just didn't really have any impact afterwards, except for Gul'dan, of course. But, like Yrel felt like she could have shown up in Azeroth to help fight off the Legion or something.
Exactly. She could have done that.
Get why she stayed back, because they did need Guardians back in Draenor, and trusting Grom by himself wasn't exactly a smart move.
No.
So I understand Yrel staying back in Draenor, but once they realized it's not like Draenor was completely closed off to us.
Yeah, no. We saw the portals and everything, I would assume.
The way that they justify it with the Magar line is that we've lost access for a while, and so part of your quest line to start that up is to re-establish that doorway.
Okay.
So at that point, then you can go back to Draenor and see everything's pretty much gone to heck in a handbasket.
That just sounds kind of
it's weird, yeah.
Because I remember at the start of the Alliance quest line in Shadow Moon Valley, when you're making your garrison, Khadgar's mages, while they can only hold it open for a few minutes, they create a portal to Stormwind.
Yeah,
yep. And they do it for the Horde in Orgrimmar too.
Yeah, same thing. They I think you have goblins doing that, but
yeah, that's how Gazlo eventually ends up and makes your garrison in the Horde version.
So there's so many mages, especially you have Khadgar.
Mm-hmm.
The whole Council of Six could have got together and made a portal to Draenor.
Yeah, so why not go to Draenor and say, hey, we need help now. Someone come help us. Unless it's easier to go one way than the other, but even then,
it's kind of a weird
concept. Was a bad move.
Well, Draenor was the way that I've looked at Draenor, and we'll get to the next question, guys, I promise. But the way that I look at Draenor is that it was a glorified promotion for the movie, because that's the only way it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, like, did we actually, when you look into the grand scheme of things, did we actually have to go to Draenor to establish Gul'dan as a villain? No, not really, but this was a really great way to be able to tell that story and add in some new characters in the process.
Yeah, there would be other ways to like bring the original Gul'dan back if they really wanted to, I'm sure.
I'm sure they could have come up with something.
That was the original concept. That was the original concept, was that they, like, how did they explain it? Garrosh was going to find like an ancient horn in Outland, and that was going to summon the original the original warlords, including Gul'dan. And so, but then at that point, they decided, well, if we're going to do this, then let's just do it the way we want to do it. And that's how we got warlords.
Okay.
So the next question that we have, we've covered the heroes, we've covered the villains, but WoW, as with most MMOs, has a lot of awesome features that I've literally seen people that are the most dedicated profession people in the game, like that's all they do. They log in, they make hammers for raid teams. Okay, that's what they want to do, and they're satisfied paying $15 for that. So I want to be able to ask you guys, like, what is your overall favorite feature that has been implemented in World of Warcraft and kind of keeps you coming to the game? And I think, Rising Sun, you've kind of answered this already, so I'll let you go ahead and start things here.
Yeah, with me, it's just the raiding, being able to come together with a group and just fight such a like grand challenge, trying to figure out the nuance of the strategy. I remember back when in Cataclysm with Ragnar, I was just trying to figure out, okay, how can we use the tools that we have to like stop the minions from getting to the hammer and blowing everyone up? So just those types of challenges I really like.
Mm-hmm. And for me, I'd actually kind of agree with you there. Like the dungeon content and the raid content has always been the best polish that I've ever seen in these games. Like being able to go into the areas like Black Temple and Ulduar and be able to see like kind of a fleshed out vision for the story that they're trying to tell. That's kind of where WoW started for me. Now we have, the storytelling scenarios that will happen throughout the games. And so it's not necessarily a safe assessment to be able to say it's only in the raid content that you see the true polish of this game. But to me, the best polish of the game still is in the dungeon and the raid content.
Mm-hmm. Perspective, and going back to the story, the story is not enough reason for me to keep coming back. I find it interesting, but I can get a better story from other games if that's what I want.
Yeah, well, to me, like rating also just has a unique element to not just the polish, but also being able to have you and 9 other guys, you and 24 other guys work on this one particular boss, trying to figure out all of its mechanics, and then ultimately getting the kill. It's one of those things that I've always agreed with Preach. If you guys know him on YouTube, there is nothing more satisfying than killing that raid boss for the first time and just hearing 25 to 40 other guys screaming just obscenity, saying we finally did it. There's nothing quite like a high like that.
Yeah, you can't get that from a single player game, no matter how like Dark Souls or like fine-tune the bosses that you have to overcome. It's different doing it as a group.
Exactly. And that's in a lot of cases why I think a lot of people still keep coming back to raid content in WoW. Like I'm not necessarily talking about the hardcore guys like Insidia or Method. They come in because they want to be the best and that's what they're interested in doing. But for people in raiding guilds like you and mine, it's being able to go with your friends and figure out these bosses and be able to take them down as a team.
Right.
Kind of thing. Art, what aspect of that would be for you?
Well, mine is actually probably controversial, but I'll get to it. And no, it's not the selfie patch.
Damn it, no.
6.1, never forget.
Hey, we got the jukebox in that. I love the Garrison jukebox, but go ahead.
Okay, I love the Garrison jukebox too. I always play Karazhan on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so mine is actually cross-realm raiding.
You know what? I can understand that too.
So a lot of people would be like, okay, well, Group Finder, LFR, all of these, they killed the server community. And I agree with that. I think for convenience, I understand why they exist. You don't want to be sitting in trade chat nowadays looking for a group for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just want to log in, click the button, and be like, okay, I'm a DPS looking for a mythic Blackrock hold. I want to join this group. They invite you. You're in the instance in 5 minutes. Convenience-wise, it makes a lot more sense.
Well, the other aspect to put into that, just kind of adding to it, is, we all are YouTubers, which means we're working our, like, not only are we doing 9 to 5s, and we're also working hard to be able to develop content for our channels. Sometimes that time frame doesn't work with what your guild is doing. Mm-hmm. And so the cross realms, and in fact, one of the greatest features to me BFA will ever have is communities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right now, if you can raid at if all you can do is raid at 2 a.m. on Tuesday that week, you can find people to do that with.
Well, I wanted to go in that direction with the whole cross realm thing. Being a raid leader guild master myself, what I love about cross realm raiding is now, ever since it existed, I can post a recruitment message up on Reddit or the WoW forums and get all these people from Tichondrius, Sargeras, Stormrage, Emerald Dream, the Forgotten Coast, and they can whisper me and I can be like, hey, look, you can raid with us and see if you like the environment before you spend $25 or even $50 if you're faction and server changing. Before you even make those payments, you can see if you like our guild.
Yeah, I've done that. Well, for me with the cross-realm raiding, the one grade group I'm in is like spread across 2 to 3 different servers or 2 different realms, and that's never been an issue. Before we had the communities, we had a Facebook group that we were able to keep in touch with each other.
Mm-hmm. Or in the case of my guild, we actually used, I think it was called OQ to be able to keep in contact with 2 or 3 other guilds that had friends of ours in their ranks. And so at that point, we could all come together to come and do, a Throne of Thunder run kind of thing.
Prior to OQ, you had Open Raid.
Yeah, well, I think Open Raid is still around, isn't it?
Still around, yeah.
Is it still used?
It's not as much as it used to be.
What's actually surprised me is, like, you actually find some of the more dedicated players of Open Raid that come to, like, do Q&A and BlizzCon they've been begging for the communities tab for forever, and now they finally have it. Like, they can raid with people on their friends lists.
Yeah, it's so convenient. I really like communities. It's not something that I would have gone on my say to say I wanted, but I'm glad to have it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that as soon as I saw the communities tab, and I'll advertise this for people if they want to be able to join this, if they listen to the podcast. I literally looked at communities, and I looked at my buddy Brinton, who unfortunately couldn't join us tonight, and said, we should start one, because how many people that listen to the podcast would we love to be able to go and raid with, or just go do a dungeon with. And, we may not necessarily be able to do that with, the regulars of our guild kind of thing. And that's where that's an amazing feature to bring people in and just say, you know what? I love my guild, but sometimes I want to go and raid with people who have either helped me out with my podcast or helped me out with YouTube or things like that. And this gives me a way to be able to do that.
I think it's a way to reinvigorate, like, the old community aspect before all these modernizations and, like, accessibility features like Dungeon Finder, Raid Finder, PvP Finder, if you want to call it that.
Well, and for me, like, the communities are a godsend, because I don't know about you guys, okay? But whenever I queue for frickin' LFR or frickin' LFD, I don't know what I did. I don't know which horrible ethereal god I pissed off, but I always get a group of assholes. Pardon my French. And look, occasionally you'll get a diamond in the rough in them, and it's like, oh, you're a really decent guy, I'll friend you. Most of the time, I'm in there with 4 a-holes, and I get so sick of that.
Well, here's a story for you.
And that's why this is an amazing thing.
I joined a group last night, and this wasn't through the queue. This was through the listings in Dungeon Finder. Yeah. So it was under pre-made groups. I joined a group for one of the new dungeons, Siege of Borealis. I joined it. and I was on my monk healing. So there's a really undergeared tank in there. I'm like, you know what? He's undergeared, but I feel like I can heal him. There's 2 hunters and some other DPS in there.
Yeah.
One of the hunters is AFK. I realize, and this is no shot at Brazilian players or anything.
Yeah.
But
I have a feeling I know where this is going.
we all know those servers like Ragnaros.
It's Quel'Thalas for me.
Quel'Thalas, Drakari. There's 6 or 7 of them out there that you're like, okay, I need to watch this person because a majority of the time the players from those servers are of lesser quality.
Yeah.
So there were 2 people from Ragnaros in the group who happened to be friends. One of them was AFK, the other was the group leader. The group leader was telling us that his friend was in the bathroom. I'm like, okay. So me and the tank started clearing the trash with the other DPS. The leader was helping out. We clear almost all the way up to the first boss. The AFK hunter comes back and they both leave the group. And me, the tank, and the healer are sitting there. We're like, huh. So the other DPS was such a great dude, and he's like, you know what? Give me lead. I will find 2 more DPS, and we can finish this.
See, for me, like the I love that we can get into these horror stories because this is just as much of an experience in Warcraft as anything else. For me, that story is roughly when I came into a halfway completed Utgard Pinnacle.
Okay.
And I believe they were. This was back when Scotty was hard. Okay, so like when you actually had to think about it.
Back when you walked in the dungeon and it didn't ask you if you wanted to be saved.
That too. But at that point, like I was actually used to this on my server where people couldn't do Scotty, which for people who just to kind of get you back in the Wayback Machine here, Scotty was
five harpoons, right?
Yeah, you had to do 5 harpoons, and it was kind of a gauntlet match. And so if you didn't have a properly geared tank and at least a properly geared healer, you could probably do well with at least 1 DPS. But if you didn't have that geared tank, that geared healer, you were not going to have a fun time. And I had one of those classic moments on my druid tank. Came across a dude, a hunter, by the way, that I was doing more DPS than. Now, I'm willing to forgive a lot of things.
That was when tanks did no DPS, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, like, the most that I can do is swipe because Thrash didn't exist yet. I don't think it was there yet. And so at that point, I'm doing more DPS than them. And I'm literally pointing this out to the hunter, like, what are you doing? And I actually found out the problem. He was basically trying to...
Concussive.
I want to say he was going for an achievement. No. He wanted to be the sole hero of this entire run and get all the harpoons and didn't know where to use them.
You try it, I guess? Try the cannons off on the side.
Oh, no. By the time I got in there, they were done explaining it to him. They were done. And I'm not a nice guy when it comes to certain things. So I occasionally have been known to rock the boat. And I basically called him out on it. I'm just like, if you don't know how to use the harpoons, then please give it to somebody who actually could. And we had the healer volunteering to grab the harpoons. He knew what he was doing. And so at that point, he's like, well, I have the achievement. And that this is where the achievement comes in. I have the achievement. That means I know what I'm doing.
Apparently doesn't.
Achievements can be bought.
Thank you, Art, for pointing that out. Because that was the problem here. And actually, this incident and many others in Wrath of the Lich King created an eternal hatred for achievements for me for 2 expansions. I would literally leave LFD groups if the term achievement, chivos, chieves, or anything like that was used in the party chat.
I actually have a story relating to that.
So before we get to that, Rising Sun, do you have any stories?
I'm just enjoying listening to these stories, so continue.
Okay, all right. So go ahead.
Okay, so it was in Warlords. We were doing Upper Blackrock Spire, I believe, on Mythic when Mythic came out.
Okay, cool. All right.
So right, like the week Mythic came out, we're like, okay, let's try Upper Blackrock Spire out. Why not? Let's have fun with it. So me and 3 other guildies go in, and we need 1 more person. So we grab, I remember it was this druid, and we get to the second boss's room. But I don't remember what his name was, but it's the room that has Leroy Jenkins in it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And we're killing the second boss, and like right as the second boss ends, he resurrects Leroy. And he types in chat, he's like, "Can we do achievement?" And I'm the tank, my buddy Josh is the healer, we got 2 of our good friends as DPS, and we just ignore him. We clear all the way up to the 3rd boss, and we don't even touch that side room that Leroy
has to do, yeah.
So we kill the 3rd boss, and Leroy's about to go off and run, and he's like, "Guys, go back, I want the achievement." And my buddy Josh was like, "I don't get out of work to do your achievements." He just puts that in chat, and Leroy up and runs and dies. And then he starts crying in the chat. He's like, "I hate you guys, I just wanted Leroy."
Then go do him with your guild. Like, and then seriously, for a lot of those, like, I don't know about you guys, but like whenever those followers would kind of come in, I wouldn't do them pug. I'd do them with guild because that pretty much guarantees to get it. For me, like a similar story is, did you ever have a problem with Cronan in Blood Maul Slag Mines?
Not really.
Yeah, that guy.
Not really.
There was a point, I can't remember which patch, where he got fixed, where so he takes damage just like everybody else does, but there was a point where Cronan was an idiot, and he would literally walk through crap that would just kill him.
One shot him.
Okay, and so we actually my guild actually figured out a way to be able to clear all that crap and then do Cronan to be able to unlock him, kind of thing. And we'd done it for a number of people on the server. And then we got that one pug. And that one pug decided to pull him. Like we got to the furnace boss. I think he's okay. No, is he the final? No, he's not the final one, but it's where you have to do that whole
left
fire
side.
Yeah, he's that fire elemental gauntlet.
He's like the second from the last boss.
Yeah, you had to be able to do him to get to the final one. So
okay.
What we didn't know was our little pug rogue had decided, because I think we hadn't hit that area yet. We wanted to get this one out of the way because it was the problem child boss. And so we were out clearing that way. Our little pug rogue snuck in and unlocked Cronan. I don't know how he didn't trigger a boss or anything like that. I don't know how.
You said he was a rogue? So maybe.
He was a rogue. Yeah, that's my guess.
Just stealthed in.
Triggered Cronan, didn't tell anybody. And we actually had a buddy from another guild that we were trying to help him get it. And we were doing that gauntlet. Well, it was at that point where you start getting those fire jets from the fire elementals.
Oh.
And all of a sudden we see a naked Cronan walking in and gets insta-killed.
Uh-huh.
I hope it wasn't a kid. All right, because the level of salt that went his way, myself included, because this was a good friend. I wanted to help him out. I had just barely gotten Cronan. I wanted to be able to help him get it because he was a big fan of the joke and everything like that. And the level of salt that came to this pug player, I swear, like if it didn't create trauma for him, it should have.
Okay, that brings me to a question. Did either of you do Scholomance on challenge mode back in MoP?
Yes.
No,
okay.
I wanted to do challenge modes, but I could never get a group to be able to do it consistently.
Well, you've seen the dungeon. You know the student room, right? Where Professor Slate is?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we were doing Scholomance on challenge mode, and we killed Lillian Voss, and there was this pug druid in our group, and we said, make sure you use the invisibility potion
through
this room. Because the strategy was, in that room, you would just invis through it down to Gandling.
Yeah, so you could avoid a possibly very complex fight to explain to people, especially on challenge mode.
So the 4 of us invis down to Gandling, and what does this pug druid do?
Well, everything.
Cat form.
Stealth or prowl.
You would think. Dashes into the students and turns back into Boomkin form.
And then the star falls.
No, it just dies. Just dies
because Boomkins were pretty squishy in WoD or in Mop too.
The 4 of us are sitting at Gandling. This is like our 7th challenge mode run. We're like, you know what? We're just gonna 4-man it. We do it. She gets the gold challenge mode run, and we're just like, we should have kicked her before that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hate to be the guy, Art, but you know what? That's my assessment. You should have kicked her. You gave her charity that I don't think she deserved.
Yeah.
That's me.
Oh, there. Well, I think it was the High Mountain Dungeon. I was doing Mystic Plus. We were having a lot of what was it? We were going down to the final boss. There's one guy in our group who has been basically a jerk the whole time, and we were having trouble with it. And he left and decided, okay, screw it. We're going to 4-man this. And we're finally able to do it without that guy.
Yeah, that's the funniest thing is like you get that one pug, and then all of a sudden you take him out, and it's literally a 180.
I think there's one where I kicked someone like that, right before the end. And yeah, I don't remember the details. I should come up with stories before this podcast.
We actually had a guy in a +15 Eye of Ashara leave on us when we got to the final boss. We got to Wrath of Ashara. We were about to 3-chest it, and he just leaves.
Of course.
And he's just like, you guys are bad, and leaves. So we 4-man the last boss, but we got a 0-chest run because we kept wiping because it was tyrannical.
Oh, yeah.
Flowing wasn't a fix.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we're actually kind of running out of time, so I'm going to wrap things up to our... Thankfully, we were at our final question. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I didn't realize that we'd been talking for so long.
No.
My clock, so...
So at this point, I want to go into kind of our last question here, which is in regards to the most recent expansion, Battle for Azeroth. So far, what I basically want to get into is what's kind of your assessment of Battle for Azeroth? What are you looking forward to? And what do you think were a misstep so far in Battle for Azeroth? For me, I haven't played a whole lot of it. So it's kind of hard to tell. I really like where the story is going for both factions. I like what they're doing with Kultiris and tying it to a lot of the guilt that Jaina has to deal with in her everyday life. But I also like the fact that we're finally going into the troll lore that people have been screaming for in Zandalar. But I gotta be honest here, as the biggest perk to me thus far, just given the experience that I've had, has been the allied races. Has been the fact that now we have basically something that's been screamed for since BC days. You know, I still remember in my guild, there was a very vehement campaign to bring high elves to the Alliance. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because they didn't want blood elves on the Horde. They liked the blood elf models, but they didn't want to go and be a full on Horde guild. And this, while it doesn't answer that question or answer that completely, it at least gives you something. So at that point, if you want to be a blood elf on the Alliance side, well, you can be a void elf. So I really do like the addition of the allied races and adding lore into them. Although, and this is going to go into kind of my complaint thus far, is also kind of the allied races in the fact that they had a really prime moment to be able to tell a lot of really great story about these allied races. And they decided not to do it by basically putting the character at level 20. And it actually would have been I'll probably do a video on this at some point, just kind of going into, say, High Mountain Tauren and saying, this is what you could have done to be able to speed up the questing experience and give the lore of the High Mountain Tauren so that your player could then develop a bond with them, or the Void Elves, in particular, the Nightborn. You could have done that, and I feel like that was kind of a misstep.
Yeah, like actually, kind of like how they have like the Death Knight or Demon Hunter starter zones, where they start off in this new area, and you like learn the story of that area before you go off into the world.
Pretty much.
And for most of them, it's not even a new area. Like you have High Mountain, Suramar.
Mm-hmm.
Like
yes, you could
you're using already existing areas. You just need to phase the questing experience.
Yeah, and so unfortunately, I feel like that was a missed opportunity, but it also goes into my overall negative, which is there have been a lot of really major story moments in this expansion in particular that were relegated off to comics, to collector's edition books, to books themselves, that I really felt like they should have been there. Like I said earlier, there's a moment in the novel Before the Storm that is more, unfortunately, in game, the sparking moment for a lot of people is the burning of Teldrassil. They didn't know that there is an incident, and I'm spoiling Before the Storm, so sorry guys, there's an incident where Sylvanas fired on her own people.
Oh, okay.
Basically kind of pointing her in that direction, because one of the plots that happens in Before the Storm is there's a goal that Anduin basically wants to keep, where a bunch of his followers, along with his ward, his butler, basically, all of which had family or friends or wives, husbands in Lordaeron, who are now part of the Forsaken. And Anduin, in honor of his butler, I don't want to spoil it too much, but in honor of him, he actually works something out with Sylvanas to reunite them. And to have a day where they can come and meet with their Forsaken lost loved one.
Yeah.
And in turn, because since Sylvanas is the war chief, the undead basically established a council of governors to be able to run things in Sylvanas' absence, since she has to stay in Orgrimmar.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we didn't know this, but there was a plot amongst the undead to basically defect.
So like to rebel to the Alliance then in Anduin?
Not necessarily to fuel the Alliance effort, but to be with their loved ones again.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And Sylvanas did not take it well at all. In fact, she basically killed them.
Okay.
On the battlefield.
So, that's probably my biggest complaint with the story here is that, as you say, there are all these interesting parts that I'd like to see, but I don't feel like I should have to do more than the game to get the story. Like, I'm okay with there being like extra things that are extras, but not core to understanding the story.
No, these are just really great lore moments that would help flesh out the world. And you could do like, I'm not saying that you have to have the entire moment as like a Siege of Lordaeron kind of experience, but if you could openly reference it in the game so that people are aware of it, that would be an awesome thing.
Even if it's just dialogue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, way back, I don't know how many people actually know this little Easter egg, but I'm going to go ahead and spoil it for you guys. If you go to the former throne room of Lordaeron, and you turn up the ambient noise
you can hear
the cutscenes of Arthas killing his father.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a little thing to give people that lore. And what I'm basically proposing is like, you take a couple of these moments and you say that they happen at rare times. In fact, one of them from not from War Crimes, the Jaina book, Tides of War, actually does, from what I've never been able to see it, but it does happen in Dalaran, where unfortunately one of the people that Jaina lost was her gnomish apprentice. And occasionally in game, since her father and mother were the kind of the lamplighters of Dalaran, you can go down Dalaran and you will see this ghostly echo of a female gnome that is lighting the lamps. And it's a reference to Kindi, the name of the girl, because she died in the mana bomb. And she literally becomes she literally becomes arcane dust in Jaina's hands.
Huh.
Like that moment is what sets Jaina off. Okay?
Right.
And so you could occasionally come across this. I don't know if it's actually in game, but I've been told that it possibly is. I've never come across it myself. But here's another example that they could have put in this game. In Before the Storm, there's another major moment where if you've played the priest campaign in Legion, you come across the resurrected body of Archbishop Alonsus Fowl. The guy, for those who don't know him, he is the priest that created the Order of the Silver Hand.
Oh, okay.
And actually trained the first paladin. So he actually trained Uther. He trained Tyrion. He trained Gavinrad. He also trained a young up-and-coming paladin named Turalian. And they actually have them they have a reunion in Before the Storm.
Okay.
And it's a very powerful moment. And it actually would have been really cool as if you went to Cathedral Square in Stormwind at 2 a.m. and you got to see a scene of Turalian and Fowl meeting each other for the first time in years, in decades.
Right.
That would have been a really awesome thing to be able to go and see.
Yeah, it's like all these things to add like more depth to the lore of everything else going on. Like, you have to focus on a ton, but by having it be there.
Yeah, it's just basically adding flavor to something that is already delicious, kind of thing.
Exactly.
So for you, Rising Sun, what is your take on Battle for Azeroth so far? What do you think is its highs, and what do you think is something that could be improved on?
I think a lot of it for me will be like how the gameplay evolves with the dungeons and raids when I get into them, because I think that's what will decide it for me. The story so far is interesting, but doesn't feel like it has the execution like in the like point by point moments. So
okay, all right, and then so would you have a suggestion on how to like improve these things, or?
Haven't really thought about it, so I can't really say.
Okay,
I think it's like some of the like more side quest things. They just aren't that interesting, so I think maybe like streamlining that more would be good.
Okay. All right, and then Art, what is your take on Battle for Azeroth so far? Your highs and your lows with it.
So, Rising Sun just mentioned it, and I think it's good to go in that direction about the side quests. I think the questing experience for Battle for Azeroth, the dungeons, and what's out now, most of it's really, really good. But I think the questing zones, especially when it comes to the side quests, are a little too big. And at the same time, I feel like the war campaign is a little too short.
Okay.
So I think the side quests should have been kind of eliminated, because I don't really care about gathering honey from elementals in Stormsong Valley, or fishing up stuff in a cove in Drustvar. What I want to know is, during the war campaign, a bit of a spoiler, on the Alliance side, you eventually get this quest to go bomb a ship. So there's this Zandalari ship that these Mogu have plans to. And you figure out that if you look at the map of Zandalar and you look at where Zabala is, it's pointing directly down to the Isle of Giants in Pandaria. Oh. And you learn that there might be a Zandalari ship docked in Pandaria waiting to raid us. And that like escalates the whole thing between the Horde and the Alliance. And when you get to that final quest in that chain, you're on that Pandaren Zandalari ship. And there's this quest called King's Rest. And the quest text reads, "We don't know what King's Rest is, but the Horde have found it. We need to know what King's Rest is. Hurry and find out." And that's your attunement to the Horde dungeon King's Rest.
Huh.
Okay. All right. I like what
like,
that's doing.
Like, I don't think that should have been the attunement to it. I think that should have been like a breadcrumb quest. Like, let's go out to King's Rest, see what King's Rest is, have a quest line over there to unlock King's Rest and understand it.
Because as opposed to giving it to you.
I think the biggest crime that BFA is committing is, if you're Horde only, you're only seeing the Horde side of it. If you're Alliance only, you're only seeing the Alliance side of it. You should be, through specifically characters like Bran Bronzebeard, be able to witness the other side. because in the Horde dungeons, when you go to like the Underrot or something, Bran accompanies the Alliance, and he's like, "This must be near the Titan Vault, Old Deer. We don't know what Old Deer is, but I need to find the secrets down here."
Yeah,
and he narrates through it. But when you see certain cutscenes from the Horde side with like characters like Zool and Mithrax, you're like, oh, so that's who Mithrax is. That's why Bwonsamdi is important. That's what happened to Zool and why he's called Zool Reborn in the Dungeon Journal.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those things, and actually you've created a little bit of worry for me, because Dungeons and Attunements is definitely something that I'm not all that keen on. In fact, what I think should happen is
they're actually account wide, so don't fear.
Okay, cool. Because the problem that I have is, like, I hate to be an old man, but this is actually one of those things where I think Legion got it right, where they weren't necessarily attuned. You could do them. But these zones would give you a motivation ultimately to go into those dungeons. Ultimately, in some cases, just to get your pillar of creation, right. Or in some cases to finish up story, like in Darkheart Thicket, being able to save Malfurion.
These attunements for King's Rest and Siege of Borealis are more akin to the attunement for Return to Karazhan.
Yeah, so at that point, that's a little worrying to me, because like, I love the reboot of Karazhan. Believe it or not, I love what they did with that, but I didn't like the fact that they barred it. I liked it at first that they barred it behind an attunement, because that reminded me of the old days of actually having to do that. But then when I look back on it as a Legion player, as opposed to a Burning Crusade player, I immediately didn't like the idea of putting attunements out there again.
My problem with them now is you're looking in the group finder and you're like, there's only one group for this dungeon.
Yes. That's kind of the problem that happens with it.
Yeah, especially if the attunement is for content that you're really not that interested in anymore.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a little frustrating. All right. Well, those are actually amazing things for people to be able to take into Battle for Azeroth. And actually, what's really funny is you guys kind of got me wanting to play the game tonight. Like,
you have plenty to play now too. So.
I'd be like,
you should sleep though.
I should sleep, all right, because I love my daughter, but she's gonna wake me up at 3 a.m. But like this discussion really has made me want to go in and start seeing these dungeons and start seeing the lore for a lot of these characters, because this has just been a major inspiration for that. But unfortunately, we are way over time for this podcast, and we just need to go ahead and wrap things up. So first of all, for people who want to be able to ask you guys additional questions about WoW, or if they want to come and check out your content, Rising Sun Reviews, how do they do that for you?
Oh, I have a YouTube channel called Rising Sun Reviews. I typically talk about anime stuff there. I might occasionally do something different, but I've never done anything about WoW before, so this is completely out of normal for me. But it was fun to do.
Hentai reviews.
One hentai review. I did not even watch a hentai before I made that review.
That's right. You do have a hentai review.
Yeah, I was in a Discord call with some friends, and I don't know why, but I decided I should make a hentai review. I went on Mal, looked, okay, what's the recent hentai? Lilith Tales. Okay, let's summary. I'm going to record this review live in the call with friends, bring up Audacity, and then ask my friend to edit it for me, and he actually watched it to get clips.
Here's the real question. Why haven't you made a hentai review about a hentai that you thought up yourself about twin-tailed girls?
Oh, don't even go there, man. This is going to get into fanfic territory.
Oh, I have stories about fan fiction.
Well,
if you're ever in Discord, do not admit that you watched the show A Sister Is All You Need with your sister. Fan fictions will be written. Multiple ones.
Yeah. I hate to be the guy, but that might have been on you, my friend. That might have been on you.
It was.
Also, if I can make a recommendation to people, recently with Rising Sun, I actually watched a live stream that you did of Doki Doki Literature Club. And I actually enjoyed the heck out of that. So I would recommend that you guys check that out as well on his YouTube channel.
I might be doing more gaming live streams in the future. I'm kind of busy now, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm kind of making that decision myself too. Like now that I can actually do streaming and not have it affect my my PC that much, I'm considering doing it too. But the art of anime. How do people get a hold of you, my friend?
As I said last time, just by putting that in the YouTube search bar.
Exactly. And the video I'm going to recommend for you guys, because I came across this after we did the JRPG video. I think it's because you recommended it, but I can't remember. But it was your video on Final Fantasy IX and how basically it was your kind of love story towards that game.
Mm-hmm.
And just watching that made me, well, kind of curse you. I'm not going to lie, because I'm making my dry run through Final Fantasy VIII right now, since I'm doing 7 up on the channel. But it made me just pine to go and pick up Final Fantasy IX once again and be able to play through it and just see all the really awesome moments with Zidane. I'm not saying Zidane, people. Zidane, Vivi, even Steiner has some good moments in that damn game.
When I replayed it, I was like, you know, I underappreciated characters like Quina and Amaranth. But
yeah,
when you play back through it, you're like, they're just as important as Zidane, Vivi, and Garnet.
Yeah, for me, it was like I found when I first played through Final Fantasy IX, Aiko to be very annoying because, you know, she's that stereotypical kind of moe character. And second playthrough, I actually didn't notice all of the summon lore that you actually get from Aiko as a character. That was actually really cool. And so for me, if you guys want to be able to reach out to my content, obviously you're on my channel right now, but you can look up Drak Let's Plays on YouTube or Drak2326. I currently do a playthrough of Final Fantasy VII, although a lot of my stuff is kind of on hold because if you haven't heard the news, my second daughter was just barely born earlier this week, and so things are kind of on a hiatus. But I will be back very soon to be able to continue Let's Plays, live streaming. I do game reviews, and actually I have a couple of reviews to put out on the down the pike. And also, you guys can check out my Let's Play of World of Warcraft named The Tale of Drakfu. Because I'm Drakfu, and I punch things, and they fall down, and they die.
I need to watch a playthrough of the Alliance, like War of the Thorns things. That way I can see it.
And that's another thing you guys can check out too. I have the Alliance, both the Alliance and the Horde version of the War of the Thorns and the Siege of Lordaeron. The only thing I'm going to warn people in advance is, well, my recorder died in the middle of the Jaina cutscene in the Horde version. So instead, I decided as a treat, I would give you guys my genuine reaction from the Alliance side of it. So, and that's been both a love-hate relationship for people because apparently I blew out their ears with their headphones. When I screamed out, "Beware the daughter of the sea!"
Okay, so don't wear headphones when I watch it.
Good. Yes, please don't do that. I tend to have a very loud voice.
We should sign this off with Drak singing the Jaina shanty.
Don't start me. Don't start me.
Yeah.
I go ahead, Rising Sun.
I was going to say I want you to do it.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we'll see if we can do something like that. But before that, if you guys want to support the podcast, the first thing that we would ask you to do is to support the RSS feed, which is whywegeek.podomatic.com. I normally do these recordings once a month, and I just devote an entire subject to them. And thankfully, things are kind of set up for the rest of the year. So if you guys want to be able to see these guys back, let me know so that I can bring them back for the other subjects that I have going for the rest of the year. Who knows? They might actually want to be able to come back and discuss some of the other things that we've got going. But please support the RSS feed at whywegeek.podomatic.com. And if you want to make suggestions for podcasts or even say, I want the Art of Anime to be back in this episode, and this is why I want him, you can do so at whywegeek@gmail.com. You can also follow Why We Geek on Twitter at whywegeek. And that's going to go ahead and do it for this podcast, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for your continued love, support, and patience with the podcast, especially with all of the things that are going on with both YouTube as well as in my life. I really do appreciate it. And once again, thank you to my panelists, Rising Sun Reviews, as well as The Art of Anime, for coming in and just shooting the breeze about Warcraft with me today. And that's going to go ahead and do it for us. Thank you guys so much. And we'll see you guys next time for even more Why We Geek. But I guess I've got to go ahead and do this.
Zong zong.
Why this, oh daughter of the sea? Why this? Did you forget your seaside days? On this, the pride of our nation's eyes, how could she go astray? And we'll just tune into the actual tune.
Zog zog.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. And thank you guys so much for showing up. And we will see you guys next time for more Why We Geek, obviously.